Greetings, loved ones. Today we're going to ask the question, can your child dial 911? And we're going to talk about a 5-step plan to turning children into potential lifesavers. Help us get these messages out. Subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and the notification bell, and please share these messages with others because you never know, just by doing so, you could save a life. I want to ask you, if there was an emergency, do your kids know what to do? Do they know how to use a smartphone? Can they give their home address? Can they unlock the door? Can they keep themselves safe? These are important questions to ponder no matter your children's ages, and they're especially important to think about if you're living with an abusive partner. In more than a third of all domestic violence cases, children were at home when abuse occurred. Of those children, 60% or more witnessed the violence that was happening. If you are unable to get to the phone, your child could be the difference between life and death. Experts say that most kids over the age of 13 can master dialing 911, though kids even younger have shown they can do it as well, like the story of a 2-year-old girl in South Carolina who dialed 911 one morning reporting that she couldn't get her pants on. So it's never too young to start reviewing the process with your child. So here are 5 steps to get you started. Number 1, define an emergency. Start by explaining to your children what constitutes an emergency and what doesn't. You can share that pants 911 call as an example. Give them several scenarios and ask if they would need to call 911 in those situations. For example, you fall off your bike and scrape your knee versus you hear mommy scream for help. Make it into a game if it helps. And if your child is over, you can add a warning that calling 911 as a joke can get them in trouble. In many places, it can result in a citation or a fine. Telling younger kids about this, however, may scare them out of calling 911, and let's face it, the police department is more apt to forgive a mistaken call from a confused 3-year-old than from a joking 14-year-old. So number 2, you want to walk them through the process of dialing 911 on each phone in your house. One phone's keypad could vary from another. So let a child pick up the phone and practice dialing 911 without punching the keys or just disconnect the phone first. This also includes any cell phones in the house, which means they either need to learn how to enter your security code to unlock it, or depending on the phone, you may be able to program their fingerprint in as a way to unlock it. Once unlocked, many cell phones require you to enter the number and then press send to complete the call. Another thing to ponder regarding cell phones is, does your child know where the cell phone is? Consider keeping it in the same place all the time. If you currently live in a hotel or somewhere where there is a communal phone, cover the steps that might be necessary to use the phone there. In many hotels, you are required to dial 9 first to get an outside line and then 911. There's a tragic story out of Texas where a little girl desperately tried to call 911 from a hotel when her father began abusing her mother, but she couldn't because she didn't know that she needed to dial 9 first. Number 3, reinforce using a landline whenever possible. Calling 911 from a landline means the call can be traceable by emergency personnel. Despite what the movies have led us to believe, tracing cell phones isn't as easy as it looks. The FCC estimates that about 70% of 911 calls are made from cell phones. In fact, it's the primary reason many people have the cell phones in case of an emergency. But often, operators can only trace a cell phone call as close as the nearest phone tower, giving them an approximate area of the call. And without a specific address, emergency services can be delayed. Teaching children to memorize their address or keeping it posted somewhere easily accessible in the home if they can read could solve this problem, but variables come into play here as well. What if the emergency happens somewhere other than at home? What if the child panics and forgets their address? This happens to adults who are panicked as well. If your state has a smart 911 program in operation, go online and sign up for a free profile. This will connect your cell phone with your address and other important details that only 911 operators can gain access to in case of an emergency. Also note, Wireless carriers are required to complete 911 calls even when the phone is not activated. Any phone that turns on and can receive a signal can make a 911 call. Number 4, practice, practice, practice. Role play with your child. You're the 911 operator and they're making the call. Give your child a few details about the emergency. Mommy's asleep and won't wake up. Or someone strange is at the door and won't go away. Or you hear yelling from outside your room. Tell your child they need to speak slowly and clearly and try to stay calm even if they're scared. They also need to listen to the 911 operator's instructions and do exactly as they're told. Make sure your child knows his or her first and last name and their address. Reassure your child that if he or she's somewhere other than home and doesn't know the address, they can still describe where they are. Have them start by describing what they see, a restaurant across the street or a license plate on a car, if they can identify the numbers and letters. For younger children who may have trouble remembering the 3 digits to call for help, child care expert Robin McClure suggests using the melody to Frere Jacques. So excuse my voice, but here we go. There's a fire, 911, 911. Call the fire department, 911, 911. Kids love to learn things by songs and they never forget them. Some experts say that using a fire in the song may be a less scary example for kids than saying a violent intruder, even though you can reassure that 911 operators handle all emergencies. Number 5, you need to have a safety plan with your kids. If you're considering leaving an abusive partner, you've probably thought about a safety plan. If you haven't, you need to. And maybe you thought it better to keep your kids in the dark about details. After all, it could scare them. Experts argue that kids should be a part of a safety plan. Communication with your children is key. Teach them how to call for help. That can empower them in the midst of something very frightening. It empowers them in a situation in which they would feel powerless. Lots of information here. And with 1 in 3 women experiencing domestic violence worldwide, and 15 million children witnessing the violence each year. The question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. You're called. We are all called to be champions for justice. And those who suffer violence, they need to know that those who love them and those who don't even know them will reach out and step out to them to give them the help and the courage they need to leave before it's too late. Please help us get these messages out. Subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and the notification bell, and share these messages with others. You never know. Just by doing so, you could save a life. If you are a victim of violence, please listen to me. You've been lied to and lied to and lied to and lied to and lied to. I want you to know the truth. The truth is, you're valued, you are loved, you are intelligent, you are beautiful. God doesn't want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. And you know what? There is a way out. And it's not your fault, and abuse is not love. If you're a victim of violence, please reach out to somebody today. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, please call 911 for help. And if you know of a child suffering violence, tell the authorities. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to help children find courage after trauma. Until then,